Black heart surgeon defies police barriers to save chief's daughter, leaving everyone in shock. Blood spattered across the lens as the clock on the wall ticked down 7 minutes. 7 minutes to save a life. 7 minutes before everything falls apart. I gripped my scalpel heart, hammering, but my mind raced back to how I'd been pulled over, handcuffed by bias, my credentials ignored, while a child's life hung by a thread. Those officers cost me precious seconds. If I don't act now, she dies. If I do, I expose a system built on suspicion and fear. This is more than surgery. It's a fight for justice, one heartbeat at a time. If you believe every second counts, and justice can't wait, hit that subscribe button now. Smash the like if you're ready to stand against bias, and drop a comment with "I'm watching" to join this fight. Stay with us because what you're about to see will challenge everything you thought you knew about power, prejudice, and the price of one heartbeat. The night air in Oakland carried a restless hum, sirens echoing through narrow streets, street lamps casting long shadows on graffiti-tagged walls. Here in the heart of the city's Fruitvale district, communities of color gathered in block parties and corner stores bound by shared histories of struggle and resilience. But beneath the laughter, a tension pulsed, a history of broken trust every time blue lights flickered on a dark road. Dr. Jamal Washington knew this tension better than most. He grew up 2 blocks from that very hospital, watching his mother scrub floors in scrubs and dreaming of the day he'd save lives, not just witness them slip away. Now at 40, he'd become one of Oakland's top cardiac surgeons, his hand steady, his empathy unmistakable. He volunteered every weekend at free clinics, mentoring young black men who saw in him a path forward. Yet every time he donned his crisp white coat, he carried the weight of 1,000 doubts, whispers that a surgeon of his skin tone didn't belong in the OR. Across town, Police Chief Richard Mitchell presided over a force strained by calls for reform. He'd built his career on tough-on-crime rhetoric, earning the loyalty of some and the mistrust of others. His daughter Maya, a spirited 17-year-old with dreams of becoming a journalist, had spent her childhood at community rallies, where she'd asked the hard questions. Why can't cops protect everyone? But Maya's idealism clashed with her father's duty, leaving an unspoken rift between them. As midnight approached, Dr. Washington lay in bed, the city's distant pulse lulling him toward sleep. His phone buzzed, an ER alert. Paramedic Leah Patel's voice crackled through the line, urgent, controlled Jamal. We've got a code red on Highway 13. A teenage girl, massive trauma, suspected aortic tear. It's Chief Mitchell's daughter. In that moment, the world narrowed to one thought. Every second mattered. He dressed in minutes, slipping into navy scrubs and fastening his hospital ID. Outside, the streets were empty, but for the occasional car weaving under yellow lights. He sprinted to his Tesla, the engine humming as he pulled onto Coliseum Boulevard. Memories flashed the meeting he'd requested with the city council, warning about the curve on Highway 13, where countless accidents had happened. He'd been dismissed as a concerned citizen. Tonight, that same curve was bleeding his patient dry. In the passenger seat rested Leah's bag, trauma shears, clamps, a recorder she'd insisted on carrying. She'd learned from protests that accountability often came down to evidence. Nurse Hannah Garcia, on her way to relieve the day shift, would meet them at the ER doors, ready to wheel Maya straight into surgery. Together they formed a fragile alliance, healer, first responder, caregiver, united against a system that too often judged their intentions. As the city blurred past, Jamal's mind ran through the checklist: mass transfusion protocol, bypass, pump, primed, crossmatch, on standby. But beneath the calm professionalism lay a taut wire of fear. Fear not just for Maya's life, but for what would happen if he arrived late. Every red light threatened to steal another heartbeat. Every second lost was a chance vanished. Behind him, Leah tapped out radio codes, her breath steady despite the chaos. Up ahead, a flicker of blue and red lights broke the line of sight. Jamal's heart clenched. He'd been pulled over twice before, once on his way to a cardiology conference, Once after a clinic shift, all stopped by suspicion before credentials were checked. He swallowed hard, palms slick against the steering wheel, and prepared for the same old routine flash of badge fumbling with documents, precious time bleeding away. But tonight was different. Tonight the stakes weren't academic. They were the life of a young woman who was more than the chief's daughter. She was a person worth saving. As the patrol car's lights bathed his Tesla in crimson, Jamal took a steadying breath. This wasn't just about him. It was about every black man and woman who'd ever been judged at a glance. It was about justice measured not in policy memos, but in the steady rise and fall of a single heartbeat. And he was determined to win. As the patrol car's red and blue wash settled over the Tesla, Dr. Jamal Washington's chest tightened. He flicked on his interior light and caught a glimpse of Leah Patel's rigid form in the passenger seat, her eyes darting between the officers and Jamal camera recorder half hidden under her arm. She'd promised she'd capture everything tonight. Jamal glanced at the clock, 00:04:13. 4 minutes and 13 seconds since Leah's initial call. 4 minutes and 13 seconds in which Maya's aortic tear was bleeding her out. The taller officer strode to Jamal's window, flashlight haloing his stern face. Jamal rolled down the glass but kept his hands on the wheel, knuckles white. "License and registration, please," the officer said, voice flat. No greeting, no empathy, just protocol and suspicion. Jamal's throat constricted. He unclipped his ID badge, let it glint under the beam. "Officer, please, my patient is dying. This is emergency response. You can call the hospital to verify." His voice stayed even, but inside his heart hammered like a drum. The second officer lingered at the rear of the car, hand brushing his holster, gaze fixed on Jamal's dark hands. A silent question hung in the air. Why was this man in a Tesla and scrubs? Jamal swallowed. He forced himself to meet their eyes. "Her name is Maya Mitchell, Chief Mitchell's daughter. She's 16. She's losing blood fast." He reached for his phone to show the ER alert text, but the first officer held up a hand. "We'll handle it. Step out of the vehicle." Jamal's pulse spike felt like hot metal in his veins. He began, but Leah's quiet voice chided, "Don't. Just don't respond." He obeyed, hands raised as the officer directed. As Jamal stepped out, every fluorescent street lamp felt like it spotlighted him, exposed him. He let the door swing shut, and the officers closed in. One grasped his arm as the other rifled through the glove box. The recorder in Leah's coat pocket clicked on, but the officer's words were muffled under their gloved hands. In the sterile glow of the streetlight, Jamal felt the weight of decades of suspicion bearing down on him. He heard echoes of past stops, a chilly cop car when he drove home from a conference, the low grumble of excuses when he protested. Just routine. Tonight routine could kill a girl. He glanced at Leah. She caught his eye and nodded her silent support, fueling his resolve. Back in the Tesla, the lead officer leafed through Jamal's credentials, medical licenses, board, certifications, hospital ID. His partner radioed dispatch. "Unit 22 to dispatch Dr. Washington Properties. Check clear, repeat. Dr. Washington Properties. Check clear." Jamal watched the digital seconds tick. 00:06:02, 00:06:15, 00:06:44. His breath came in rasps. He imagined Maya on that operating table, blood soaking into sterile sheets, machines bleating alarms. He bit his lip, tasted iron. Dispatch crackled back. "All clear." "Proceed, Dr. Washington." The officer tossed the papers onto the hood, stepped back but did not salute, did not apologize. "Get back in," he said. "And slow down. No nod to the emergency, only a clipped reprimand." Jamal turned, a rain of shame coursing through him. He slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and slammed his fist against the wheel. "Go," Leah urged, squeezing his shoulder. He floored the accelerator. Tires screeched. The clock reset in his mind. 000000. He had exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds to the hospital. He whipped onto Coliseum Boulevard, weaving between occasional late-night taxis. Every intersection he hurtled through, he pictured the red glow of stoplights. Every honk behind him fused into a percussion of anxiety. Inside his mind flashes the meeting last month, when City Council brushed aside his warning about Highway 13's lethal curve, community rallies where he'd pledged to be a healer, Maya's bright laugh at the last fundraiser he'd attended. All those moments collided with the present. A single drop of blood could ruin an organ. A single second lost could mean irreversible brain damage. He positioned one hand on the wheel, the other dialing the ER. "Amy, update." His voice was clipped, urgent. The phone static crackled. "BP's dropping. She's 7846. We've stood by with fluids and packed cells, but she's losing ground." Amy's words cut through the roar of his engine. "I'm 2 minutes out," Jamal replied. "Prepare or get bypass pump ready." He hung up and slammed the brake just long enough for a skinny sedan to pass, then accelerated again. Leah pulled out her recorder, flipping it so the mic caught every utterance. "Saw you nail that turn," she murmured. "Impressive." But Jamal barely registered. His focus was in the ER, on draping the sterile field, on sewing the tear in Maya's aorta before she exsanguinated. Smooth hands in a storm of panic. At the next stoplight, crimson lanterns glowed. Jamal advanced. The light flicked green. He shot forward and saw more blue ahead. His stomach dropped. Another patrol car took up a position. He jerked the wheel, missing the officer's outstretched arm by inches. The passenger car behind him honked horns, blaring. He gunned the engine, cut a sharp left into a side street. Leah bit her lip, forward-leaning, recorder raised. Jamal's mind screeched. No more stops. Emerging back onto the main road, he passed a homeless encampment. He remembered patients whose lives he'd saved now huddled under tarps. He felt a knot in his throat, survivors of neglect like Maya might become without help. He nodded to himself. Get her to the table. The final mile was a blur of light and siren echoes in his head, though he had no sirens, only his own urgency. The hospital loomed a fortress of ticking clocks and fluorescent halls. He shot into the ER drop-off, screeched to a halt, leapt out, and sprinted inside through sliding glass doors. But as the automatic doors whooshed shut behind him, the conflict hadn't ended. It had merely shifted. The real battle awaited within those walls between time and technique, blood and steel prejudice and professionalism. Leah and Nurse Hannah Garcia were already rolling Maya out. Jamal darted forward, scrubbed out of his street clothes, gown snapped on over his scrubs mask, securing over his face. In the pre-op bay, he barked orders: anesthesia fast, propofol stat. Get me 2 units of O-negative. Surgeon's gown, sterile gloves. Prep the bypass circuit. His voice was calm, commanding, but each word was fueled by raw indignation. Indignation that he had been doubted, indignation that Maya had bled while he was delayed. The walls closed in the fluorescent glare, harsh enough to strip all pretense. No more polite pleas. He wielded instruments like justice itself. As the team wheeled Maya into the operating room, Jamal paused at the threshold. He touched the nameplate above the door, OR3, Dr. Jamal Washington. His own name shining under clinical lights, proof that he belonged here. He swallowed the lump in his throat and stepped inside every second since the traffic stop crystallized into focus. The incision must be precise, the clamp placement perfect. Failure was not an option. And so in the humming stillness of the OR, the conflict that began on a dark street became a fight on a sterility field. Blood and tension mingled. Each clamp closed a wound, each stitch pushed back chaos. But deep beneath the methodical moves lay a deeper battle, the battle to prove that skill transcends color, that a life rescued outweighs a moment of prejudice. As he worked, time warped again, Minutes dilated under surgical lights, each one a victory reclaimed from bias, each heartbeat a small triumph. Outside the OR window, Leah watched recorder hidden in her scrub pocket. She noted every breath, deliberate, measured, unwavering. She remembered why she'd chosen this profession to bear witness when truth needed a voice. Tonight, that voice would demand accountability not just for Maya, but for every person ever forced to plead for their right to swift care. Inside Jamal's gloved hands moved rhythmically. The aortic tear was closed. He exhaled slowly, relief and fury coexisting in that breath. The immediate threat was over, but the deeper wound, the wound of systemic doubt, remained. And in a few moments, he would have to confront Chief Mitchell, confront the institution that had nearly let Maya die. But first he would finish the surgery. Then the real reckoning would begin. The moment Dr. Washington closed the final suture on Maya's aorta, something inside him shifted. This was no longer just about saving a life. It was about reclaiming the seconds stolen from her. As the team began to clean the field, Jamal stepped back, mask hanging loose around his neck, and surveyed the quiet storm he'd just navigated. Every bead of sweat, every racing heartbeat since that traffic stop had led to this inflection point. He could remain silent, accept the perfunctory under-review, or he could wield the one weapon that never lied evidence. He walked out of the OR to find Leah Patel, waiting eyes hard with purpose. "Did you get it?" he asked softly. She pressed the recorder into his palm. "Every second," she said. "Officer Mitchell's men tried to muffle me, but I captured their voices, their hesitation, even the click when they cut off the body cam. The weight of the device felt heavy, a small black box that carried the power to shatter the silence." Back in the hallway, Nurse Hannah Garcia approached, wiping her hands on a towel. "Chief Mitchell is here," she whispered. "He's asking for you." Jamal felt a knot in his stomach, but nodded. He had two choices: face the man who symbolized the system he'd just defied, or retreat, and let Maya's near death fade into another forgotten statistic. He squared his shoulders. Today he would confront more than a chief. He would confront impunity itself. He found Chief Mitchell pacing outside the recovery room, shoulders tight, suit, jacket unbuttoned. When Jamal approached, the chief's posture stiffened. Dr. Mitchell said, voice low. "Thank you." Jamal held up the recorder. "You're welcome. But before you offer me thanks, you need to listen." He activated the device. A hush fell as the muffled murmur of officers, the solid thud of a fist on the door, and the final transmission. "Proceed with caution. No body cam filled the sterile corridor." The chief's jaw clenched, his tie twisted in his hand. For the first time, Mitchell saw what Leah had risked to record. He glanced at Jamal. "I don't know what to say." Jamal's voice was calm but unyielding. "Say you'll make this public. Say you'll fix it." The chief swallowed. His pride warred with the proof in his hand. Finally he nodded, but his eyes held only a promise. "I'll look into it," Jamal pressed on. "That's not enough. I want this shown at the next town hall. Full transparency. You'll play this in front of the public and I'll be there." Mitchell's face paled. You want me to embarrass my own department?" Jamal stepped closer. "I want accountability. If you truly believe your officers did nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear." The chief's silence was the turning point. He looked away, then back at Jamal. "All right. Thursday. Town hall. Bring your evidence." With that, the plan was set. Gather the community, confront the chief in his own arena, force the institution to answer for its actions. Over the next 24 hours, Leah edited the footage into a concise 2-minute clip. Jamal reached out to community leaders, church pastors, student activists, neighborhood watch coordinators explaining the stakes. He drafted a concise, powerful statement. "My patient almost died because of bias. Tonight you'll hear the officers admit it themselves. He enlisted Nurse Garcia to coordinate logistics with hospital PR, securing the auditorium microphones and projection equipment. Maya's mother, still fragile, agreed to stand by her daughter's side as a witness. Even Maya's younger brother, trembling with fear, said he wanted to help make sure this never happened again. As word spread on social media, tension rippled through Oakland's neighborhoods. Supporters rallied online. Critics claimed Jamal was grandstanding. Anonymous social media accounts stoked fear, warning of drama division anti-police agitators. Yet for every detractor, dozens more offered messages of solidarity. Time's up for bias? We stand with Dr. Washington. Justice isn't optional. On the morning of the town hall, Jamal reviewed his notes in the back of a quiet meeting room at the community center. He practiced his opening lines. Good evening. I'm Dr. Jamal Washington. I'm here because on Tuesday night, 7 minutes were stolen from my patient's life by the very officers sworn to protect her. He visualized the crowd, local families, reporters, the chief flanked by uniformed officers. He felt a surge of purpose, every doubt replaced by resolve. At 6:00 p.m., the hall filled. Jamal took the stage, Leah standing at his side with the recorder in hand. On the screen behind them, the clip began, red and blue lights on a dark street, Jamal's voice pleading the officers' clipped responses, the final moments of radio silence. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some faces turned pale, others fisted their hands in anger. When the clip ended, Jamal stepped forward into the glare of flashbulbs. Chief Mitchell rose slowly. "This is a difficult moment for me," he said, voice shaking. "But it's necessary." He turned to the officers beside him. "I failed to ensure accountability. Effective immediately, we will release a full report, reform our traffic stop procedures, and institute mandatory bias training with real consequences." The crowd murmured relief, skepticism, hope, all mingled in the air. As applause broke out, Jamal allowed himself a small, controlled smile. His plan had succeeded. The system was forced to answer for its actions. His patient's life was honored, and the seconds stolen were reclaimed, not just for Maya, but for every citizen who had ever been stopped, judged, and delayed by a suspicion rooted in color rather than conduct. In that charged auditorium, the blueprint for justice was drawn not by power, but by evident solidarity and a refusal to let prejudice stand unchallenged. And for Dr. Washington, the battle had only just begun. The auditorium lights dimmed, and a hush rippled through the crowd as the projector flickered on. Dr. Jamal Washington's calm voice filled the room. What you're about to see is the unfiltered truth of that night. The 2-minute clip began dashcam footage of Maya's Tesla blaring red and blue lights, the taller officer's flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. You could hear he clipped out his body cam. The feed went black for 7 critical seconds. Then the radio crackled. "Proceed with caution, no recording." A collective gasp rose as faces in the front rows paled, and even the uniformed officers on stage shifted uncomfortably. Jamal let that moment stretch. His tone low but insistent. 7 seconds. That's how long it took to decide your daughter's life was less urgent than suspicion. He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. A hand rose in the audience, a community elder, eyes full of anger. Leah's recorder hummed softly in his hand. On the screen behind him, the clip rewound to show the exact moment the officers ignored his badge, the way their shoulders stiffened at his skin color. Then Jamal advanced. You saw their faces. Now hear their own words. He hit play again, this time captions highlighting phrases. Subject appears clean, no probable cause, proceed when ready. The tension snapped taut. A student in the back whispered, "That's criminal." Murmurs rose to an undercurrent of outrage. Jamal leaned into the mic. "Chief Mitchell, you declared this under review. Tonight it's under public judgment." He stepped aside as the giant screen split. On one side, Maya in the OR, fighting for her life. On the other, the two officers laughing as they tucked their radios away once the badge was confirmed. The juxtaposition was jarring laughter against beeping monitors. A sudden clatter, someone dropped a phone. The echo amplified in the silence. Jamal pressed on. They almost let her die for minutes that weren't theirs to take. He swept his gaze across local activists, nurses, parents clutching children. If this force protects the community, why protect these officers from accountability? A pastor in the front row nodded, his lips pressed thin. Then the first officer stepped forward, flanked by two colleagues clearing his throat. Dr. Washington Sherwam. But his words faltered under the spotlight. Jamal raised a hand. Please, Officer Reyes, finish your sentence into this mic. Reyes swallowed, voice trembling. I followed protocol. A ripple of incredulous laughter broke out. Jamal's voice sharpened protocol that nearly killed a child. At that, the second officer raised a shaky hand. We didn't mean, he began, only to be cut off by Leah's quiet insistence. You did. Each word hit like a hammer. The audience leaned forward. Even Chief Mitchell's jaw clenched. Jamal unspooled the next bullet point. Starting today, we demand 3 actions: full public disclosure of all traffic stop footage, independent review board oversight, and immediate policy changes to prioritize medical emergencies. The slide behind him listed each demand in bold, blood-red letters. Cameras flashed. A local reporter's voice crackled through a live stream breaking community forces police accountability. A murmur of applause erupted, but Jamal raised a gloved hand to hold it. Applause without action is empty, he warned. He told Maya's mother, seated at the front, would you stand and speak the truth? Her voice shook as she rose. I looked at my daughter's pale face, and all I could think was, why? Silence pressed in. Even the police chief inhaled sharply. Then, like a strike of lightning, Maya, now in a wheelchair, oxygen tube in place, rolled forward. Her eyes were fierce. I thought the badge meant safety, she said, voice clear, despite weakness. But they almost killed me. Her words cracked through the stillness, and an eruption of tears and cheers followed. Chief Mitchell stood, unbuttoned his jacket, and approached the podium. The roar in the room died to a tense hush. He cleared his throat, voice heavy. I owe you all an apology. His gaze scanned the crowd, then rested on Jamal. Effective immediately, I am implementing these reforms. He gestured toward the slide, full transparency external review. Bias training with consequences. A ripple of cautious hope spread. Jamal's voice returned. This is a start, but justice is not a checkbox. It's a living process. He pointed to the officers. They will face consequences if this happens again. Flashbulbs popped as the officers shifted, their weight heads bowed. Over the next minutes, Jamal facilitated questions. A reporter pressed on specifics. How will the review board be composed? A community organizer asked, what about past incidents? Jamal answered each with clear, unwavering resolve, exposing gaps and pledging vigilance. Each answer tightened the bond between speaker and audience, reinforcing that this was communal, not just his personal victory. As the session closed, Leah stepped up with a final reveal, a petition signed by hundreds of local medical professionals demanding nationwide policy change on emergency traffic stops. She uploaded it live. The URL scrolled across the bottom of the screen. The crowd erupted again, some chanting accountability. Now Jamal ended on a quiet note. Tonight we didn't just expose wrongdoing, we reclaimed 7 seconds of a young woman's life. But our work continues. Every voice here matters. Every second matters. He nodded to Maya, then to Chief Mitchell, and finally to the assembled faces, fighters, healers, witnesses. The lights came up. The applause was thunderous, but this time it felt earned. As people filtered out, many paused to shake Jamal's hand, leave messages on the petition tablets, or simply nod in solidarity. In that charged atmosphere, the execution of his revenge had become a blueprint for systemic change, proving that when evidence, courage, and community unite, even the most entrenched bias can be dismantled one heartbeat at a time. The aftermath was electric. As the auditorium emptied, whispers turned into real talk, neighbors hugging activists, fist-bumping reporters racing to their phones. On the screen behind the stage, the petition count climbed 742 signatures, 1054, 1287, and still ticking upward. This wasn't just a local victory. It was a moment captured in pixels and hearts. Outside, community leaders clustered under flickering streetlights. A pastor pressed Jamal's hand. "You gave us hope tonight." His voice cracked. Jamal nodded, eyes scanning the crowd, mothers clutching strollers, teenagers in hoodies, uniformed nurses swapping proud smiles. They all shared one thing: renewed belief that change was possible. Back at the hospital, the sterile white corridors felt different. In recovery, Maya lay propped on pillows, eyes bright. When Jamal slipped in, her smile was wide despite the oxygen tube. "You did it," she whispered. And in that soft room, free from red and blue glare, he saw the real payoff: a life saved and a system shaken. A day later, the local news ran the clip at 6 o'clock, framing it as community forces police to own up. Online, the video racked up views by the thousands, the comments section, a chorus of "Thank you, Dr. Washington, and Oakland stands with you." Even cities half a continent away shared the story: Portland, Chicago, Atlanta, calling for their own town halls. Jamal watched the share count spike and felt a responsibility heavier than any scalpel. At the police station inside the newly formed Transparency Office, Chief Mitchell signed the final document's independent review board guidelines, mandatory bias awareness workshops with real penalties, a public dashboard logging every emergency stop. He paused, finger hovering over the pen, and thought of his daughter, her fierce speech echoing in his mind: "Badge doesn't guarantee safety." He signed. Outside, uniformed officers exchanged uneasy nods, some skeptical, some hopeful. The first training began next week. In community clinics, Nurse Hannah Garcia organized a Thank a Healer Day for Black medical professionals, putting up posters: "Heroes wear scrubs, and they save lives, not suspect them." Paramedic Leah Patel held workshops on body cam ethics, teaching first responders how to document, not dismiss. Their initiatives sprouted from that single act of courage. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the hospital lounge, Jamal removed his watch, a sturdy timepiece dangling from his fingers. 7 seconds blacked out, 7 seconds returned. He placed it in a glass case labeled Oakland's Promise, a simple monument to remind every passerby time is life and justice must move at its pace. Social media echoed the symbol. Photos of the watch case flooded feeds with the hashtag Seconds for Justice. City councils debated expanding body cam laws. Law students cited the case in moot courts. Teenagers painted murals of a heartbeat line breaking a chain. The narrative had leapt beyond 4 walls and even beyond Maya's recovery bed. Late that night, as Jamal stood on his porch overlooking the city lights, he replayed the journey: the screech of tires, the flicker of flashlights, the hush when the recording played Maya's defiant voice, the chief's apology. Justice had come in pulses, some slow, some sudden, but always forward. He closed his eyes and let the hum of Oakland breathe hope into him. Because sometimes the smallest delay can cost a life, but the smallest act of courage can change an entire system. And as long as there are 7 seconds to reclaim, people like Jamal Washington will be there, scalpel in hand, evidence in pocket, heartbeat, in sync with justice. Every time bias slows, our response lives hang in the balance. Tonight we witnessed how 7 seconds of doubt nearly cost a child her future, and how 7 seconds of courage and evidence can reclaim it. Dr. Washington's journey teaches us 3 critical truths. First, Credibility must be earned and defended. No matter how many letters follow your name, systemic suspicion can strip away authority in an instant. When Jamal's badge and credentials were ignored, it wasn't just an insult, it was a threat to life itself. We must insist on transparency tools, body cams, public footage, independent review, so credentials speak louder than prejudice. Second, community solidarity turns evidence into action. Leah's hidden recorder was powerful, but powerless alone. It was the collective outrage parents, pastors, journalists, students that forced the police chief's hand. Real change demands we move from whisper networks to public pressure sign, petitions attend town halls demand policy with teeth. When we stand together, systems bend. Third, accountability is not a checkbox, but a process. A single apology, a memo under review, or a mandatory online course won't prevent the next injustice. Jamal insisted on concrete reforms, full transparency dashboards, bias training with consequences, and an independent oversight board. True accountability is continual audit, community oversight, and real consequences for failure. But beyond policies, the deepest lesson is human empathy must outpace suspicion. Every patient, every citizen deserves the benefit of the doubt, especially when seconds mean life or death. We hold power, medical, legal, institutional, over our neighbors. With that power comes the duty to act swiftly, to listen without prejudice, and to choose humanity over habit. So ask yourself, when you see someone in crisis, do you pause or do you help? When you witness injustice, do you record or retreat? Change begins with one heartbeat of courage. If you leave here remembering nothing else, remember this: evidence dismantles bias, community transforms systems, and empathy saves lives. Let that be the pulse that guides you forward. We've seen how a single moment of doubt almost cost a life, and how one act of courage can rewrite the story. If you believe accountability can't wait, share this video with your community. Hit subscribe to stand with those who refuse to let bias steal even one more second. Comment below with your heartbeat. Will you be the next voice demanding justice? Together we can turn moments of crisis into sparks of change and ensure that every life counts in real time. Remember, courage is contagious. Pass it on.